Well, Jenna, I think at first blush, people would say it's very difficult to feel insulted by a team wanting to give you north of $30 million a year and guarantee for you 9 figures via signing bonus and guaranteed dollars. But that's not really how people actually think. People usually judge themselves by their neighborhood, by how nice is my car in comparison to my neighbor's car. And Dak's neighborhood is not necessarily just top-paid quarterbacks in football, but guys he shares a locker room with. And he plays on a team that has made a habit, more so than any team in football history, more so than any team in recent sports history, aside from the Yankees of the early 2000s, of making their guys not one of the highest paid, but the highest paid ever. I've got a list for you. Do you know which left tackle in all of NFL history has the biggest contract that's ever been signed? Cowboys tackle Tyron Smith. What about which guard in NFL history has the biggest contract a guard has ever signed? How about Cowboys guard Zach Martin? What center has the biggest contract a center's ever signed? Recently retired Cowboys center Travis Frederick. And by the way, the list continues. Biggest running back contract ever signed, Ezekiel Elliott. Biggest wide receiver contract ever signed, Amari Cooper. The biggest defensive end contract ever signed, DeMarcus Lawrence. Jalen Smith got the second biggest inside linebacker contract ever signed. So, Greg, if I'm Dak Prescott, I look around my neighborhood and say, everyone here's got a Bentley. So, yeah, a Benz sounds nice, but not in comparison to them. And I think that is a stumbling block for the Cowboys because of the dangerous precedent they've already set, Greg Jennings.
I agree 100%. And there is a level of disrespect that Dak Prescott is going to feel, and he does, and he has every right to feel that. And the reason why I say that is because when you feel like you've done everything that you've been asked of, and going into last season, the talk about surrounding Dak Prescott was, can he be consistent? Can he become more accurate? Can he actually lead this Cowboy team to the playoffs, deep into the playoffs? Well, one of those didn't happen, and it really didn't have to do with the play of Dak Prescott. He was every bit of special for this team. Had it not been for this team, the Dallas Cowboys would possibly only have won about 5 games, if that. And so when you've asked a player, when I've been asked as a player to live up to something, a standard, an expectation that, number one, I've set not only for myself, but I've set for all the guys around me, and I actually do it, you owe me something in return. And that's what Dak Prescott is saying to his Dallas Cowboy executives is, look, guys, I've done everything you've asked me to do from day one of me coming here. And then, Nick, you alluded to all the guys that you've decided to pay. And I'm supposed to be the guy. The National Football League revolves itself around the play of quarterbacks, and you choose to leave me on the outset? That's unfair. I feel disrespected, and I have every right to feel that way because my level of play says that I've earned the right to be that guy.
Wilds, let me ask you this. What do you say to the folks who say he wasn't a first-round pick, he, as well as he played, didn't lead his team to the playoffs this season when many projected them to win the division? So, yeah, he had good numbers, but who cares if you have good numbers if you don't live up to the Cowboy standard, which is win, 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 and get us back to a Super Bowl? Does he deserve to be the highest-paid quarterback in the league if he hasn't done those things?
Well, it's a great question. And, Nick, I'm going to run a theory by you. Tell me if you buy this. What do you think about a theory I'm working on? It's called the Cowboy Bump. It's a cousin of the NBA's Laker effect. So here's the idea, that Dak could take less and eventually make more. With the idea being, if you win in Dallas, you become a movie star. You win somewhere else, you're a star, but you're like a YouTube star. You look at the past Cowboys quarterbacks, Romo just signed a $17 million deal. Aikman has been the #1 guy on Fox's A-Team for 20 years. Don Meredith is Monday Night Football legend, and Roger Staubach is NFL royalty. So the idea being that maybe Dak takes just a little bit less because he knows that post-career he's set up for life. Nick, do you buy that at all?
I would buy that if that's what the Cowboys had been trying to sell to anybody else. But what they've sold to everyone else is you get the Cowboys bump and we give you the biggest contract in NFL history at your position. And again, I want to make this very clear. If I were running the Cowboys, I would not pay Dak Prescott anywhere near what they've already offered him, much less what he wants. But if I were representing Dak Prescott, I would use the argument Greg Jennings used, and if they came to me with the argument Jenna Wolfe said, which is you haven't lived up to our standard, I would say, with all due respect, Jerry and Steven, your standard is a figment of your imagination. In the 20 years before I set foot on this football field, you guys won the division 4 times. In the 4 years since I've been here, you've done it twice. In the 20 years before I got here, you made the second round of the playoffs 3 times. In the 4 years since I've been here, you've done it twice. In the 20 years before I got here, you were 8-8 or worse 11 times. In the 4 years I've been here, it's only happened once. I am your standard. And to act like you're going to pay me via Fox signing me to replace Troy Aikman in 15 years, miss me with that. I'm worried about the here and now. So I do think it exists, Wilds. I think it's a fair point. But if I'm Dak and his representation, that ain't your business, man. And I know, Jenna, you naturally are put off at times by, geez, how much more do you need? They're guaranteeing you $110 million. You're going to fight over 120. And what I'd say to you, Jenna, is he was fighting over the spread between 100 and 110 back when he was making $2 million. So you're damn straight he's going to do it when he's set up to make $30+ million in the franchise tag.
Can I just ask you guys a question? Greg, maybe I'll ask you. You played in the league. You know the Jerry Jones reputation. Jerry Jones loves his guys. He treats his guys like they're his kids. He treated Tony Romo like he was his son. Dak became his next son. Is there part of this that surprises you, that the Cowboys are playing hardball, if you will, with Dak Prescott, who could be, their next big franchise everything?
No, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, if you look at recent history, they played hardball with Ezekiel Elliott. But what has not happened until Ezekiel Elliott has decided to do it, and then prior to that, Emmitt Smith, is one of the Cowboys and Jerry's sons or favorites say, look, I'm not taking that. I want more, and sit out and hold out. And I think that may be Dak Prescott's best option to really impress the envelope and get what he's asking the Dallas Cowboys to give him. But Jerry Jones has done this before. He's not just going to hand you the money. You have to deserve the money and be deserving, and then kind of want to fight for it and say, look, I deserve this. I not only have worked for this, that I'm worth it, and I will remain worth it as long as you buy into what I have already provided you with as tangible assets. And so I look at things a little differently, because from a player's perspective, and Nick, Kevin, you were talking about all the down the road things. I'm 100% with Nick. Miss me with all of that. I'm talking about here and now. And I think sometimes we tend to look at the down the road in the future a little too prematurely and forego what we can take and literally bring in right here, right now. In this league, if a league that literally the career span is about 3.5 years, if that, it may be even 3 now, I need to make as much as I possibly can that I will be financially secure beyond my playing days, regardless if I decide to get in a broadcast booth or regardless of what the star may provide. I don't know that for certain. And so what I do know for certain is what what I'm valued at right now. And so that's what I'm going to capitalize and jump on right here, right now.
Hang on, because you mentioned something in there. Nick, I got to ask you, do you think there's really a chance that Dak Prescott doesn't start the season because of all of this?
I think it is incredibly unlikely he misses actual games, a la Le'Veon Bell with Pittsburgh, who refused to sign his franchise tag all year long. I think it's unlikely that Dak doesn't, if they don't come to a deal, I think he signs this before the start of the season. But does he sign it before the start of the offseason? And this is, Greg, I would imagine, a critical offseason. Because why? Not just because the Cowboys disappointed last year, because you got a new head coach. And you played for Mike McCarthy. You played, you were one half of a quarterback-receiver combo under Mike McCarthy. How important is this offseason for McCarthy's ability to, A, take full control of the team? How can you get a message across if Dak's not in that room, first of all? Second of all, on the field, the quarterback and wide receivers understanding what they need to do in unison in a Mike McCarthy offense. How critical is it for the Cowboys' ability to reach their full potential this year, Greg? Is it that Dak Prescott is available for every single minute of the offseason once the season does open up?
So to answer your first question, as far as Mike McCarthy getting his point across without the guy who he talked about even in his press conference, excited him about the opportunity to coach the Dallas Cowboys, and that player being Dak Prescott, it would be a challenge. It would be a challenge for a couple reasons. Number one, because your quarterback sets the tone. Specifically in the offseason, when you have guys who have offseason bonuses and tend to forego that, if your quarterback is there, they can be your voice. They are the extension of the coach. And so if Dak Prescott decides, I'm not going to come in, I'm not going to be there, that can be problematic from just that perspective and that standpoint. Number two, Mike McCarthy is huge on quarterback school. He wants to give you as much information in the offseason as possible so that during the regular season, when you start playing games, I don't have to go back and revisit all the things that should have been learned and taught and reviewed in the offseason. Now I just sharpen up things because you know it. You've gone through it more than what you would possibly even go through in the regular season, and you've spent more time on it. And the language, the verbiage, I get it. He's played football. Football is going to be football. But the verbiage, the language, conveying that to your receivers, the checks, all the things that he's going to have responsibility on and over, he needs to be there for that early rather than later. We've seen it with him and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper being acquired later in the season, and then Dak Prescott prior to the acquisition of Amari Cooper struggling. Well, it starts in the offseason. When you have a full offseason, we saw what they were capable of doing this past season because they had an offseason together. And so when you look at them going into a regular season and having the opportunity to have another offseason together under a new head coach who is going to potentially bring in some new plays, new language, possibly, you need that time to develop that chemistry and that camaraderie and just that rapport with what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel, what I see now, what you see now, how I can communicate it to you to better effectively get the result that we're all looking for.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.